It's me, Lady Ada, and I'm here at the Adafruit factory. We've got an exciting video for you today. We have a special guest with us. That's right, it's Nell Merlino. Hello.
Hi.
And you came in from London, or do you live in New York?
I live in New York, and I'm just going back and forth between New York and London.
Awesome. Well, she's by coastal, by
coastal, yes, with the Atlantic Ocean.
With the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes. That's a good way of describing it.
And you come here because actually a couple years ago we worked together, I guess, in a way, and you put me in a book called The Female Lead, or you worked on this book called The Female Lead.
I actually didn't work on the book.
You didn't work on it?
I didn't.
What'd you do?
I was in the book.
You're in the book.
I'm in the book. I was invited, I think, probably the same way you were, to be in the book.
I'm sorry. For some reason I thought you. I was
no.
You're so authoritative. I'm like, you must have helped somehow.
No, I was so impressed with it when I saw it back in February. It's the first time I saw it, and I thought it was the most incredible collection of women I'd ever met, and I wanted to meet all of them. I particularly wanted to meet you.
Okay.
Because I've spent so much time working with entrepreneurs that I was just, I decided that there was just an extraordinary opportunity sort of bundled in these pages that I wanted to make come alive. So that's why I came to see you.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think, when was this, the photos and the interviews were done, over the last 2-3 years, right?
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah, so
2 years ago.
So a little younger. But it's interesting. It's like when I did it, I didn't know who else was going to be in the book. It was like, well, you're one of them. And I think they mentioned 2 other names. I was like, okay, that sounds great. And then, 2 years later, it came out, and I was kind of sort of shocked and surprised. And it's a really beautiful book.
Yes.
And we'll talk about it in a little bit. But do you want to, let's maybe show your page. Do we have the... Yeah, there's you.
There's me 2 years ago.
That was cool. Okay, so you grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, now based in New York. You began your career as a union activist, set up your communication business, and has worked on various political campaigns on many projects that support women in business and leadership. These include Take Our Daughters to Work Day, which is neat because you had a really cool story about how that came to be. And I said, was it you worked with school systems to do it? And you actually said, no, you went the other way.
No, it happened because Gloria Steinem was seeing, after 20 years of all this work in the women's movement, that girls were still really struggling with how to be in the world and what they wanted to do and all kinds of things like that. And I met with them, and I happened to be going to my father's retirement dinner. Mm-hmm. And while I was sitting there, I realized all the people that I'd met in my life and what would happen if all girls got a chance to meet all the people that their parents worked with. Would that help them see themselves somewhere or get ideas about what they might want to do? And I went home that night and I wrote up the 5 pages, and it's happened almost every year since.
And when was that when you wrote that up?
1992, and the first year we did it was 1993. And it really spoke to girls, I think, and parents, because girls are very curious and want to be engaged and do incredible things. And they weren't really being shown a lot of that back then. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, it happens all the time now.
Yeah, when would you actually get an experience of what an office or a hospital or a laboratory?
Or an engineering company or any of that. Only these girls got to see it. And since that time, I have met hundreds of women who come and tell me that they figured out what they wanted to do, sometimes going with their parents, but often going with a neighbor or an auntie or something, and they saw something. There were also as many who saw things that they knew they didn't want to do, which is also a very good thing to figure out early on, that I don't want to be that. So it was an extraordinary event, and something like 20 million people have done it. And it's I think, changed how girls, parents, teachers, employers think about the importance of girls being able to see. I mean, all that, what's the line, you can't see it, if you can't see it, you can't be it. Mm-hmm. I think that's very true. And I'm recognized in the book for that. I've gone on to do some other things since then. But I was particularly interested in your work because you make so much of it accessible to girls and boys for that matter.
Yeah.
But it's something that kids can really grasp and understand, and they like it.
Yeah.
Which is so important.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about when you were talking about, we were talking briefly beforehand about Take Your Daughter to Work Day, is we were saying how, okay, well, the internet kind of barely existed in the 90s, but you basically had to create like a meme.
Yes.
Right? But before we had, like, there was no YouTube, there was like no Google.
There was no nothing.
There's no nothing.
There was barely email. I mean, I wasn't using email then.
Yeah.
The Ms. Foundation wasn't using email. It was...
So, like, how do you do that? I mean, because if the fact that you created, you know, this idea of Take Your Daughter to Work Day, and it was such a good idea that people were like, well, of course. And like, nobody, like, what could you say? Like, no, don't? It's such a good idea that it became
the first thing
a
that
viral
happened
idea.
Was I was sitting at a conference table at the Ms. Foundation for Women, an organization that Gloria Steinem founded, and I was working with someone there who I still am in touch with, and we had finally done the thing that, you know, when you're in business, you'd gotten it down to the one page or the package or whatever. We'd finally gotten it to a one-page description. And at that moment, Gloria walked in very dressed up, and she was going to lunch with the publisher of Parade magazine, which at the time was the magazine that came in everybody's Sunday newspaper. It had a circulation of like 33 million.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I'm going to lunch with him. And she took the paper from us. We'd handed it to her to read because we said we finally got it down to one page. And she's an editor, so she's, you know, she's good at that stuff. So she changed it from our daughter from your daughter to our daughter. She changed that, and then she said, and then she folded it up and put it in her pocket. She had a beautiful leopard print skirt on. I'll never forget it. And she said,
"Well, this is amazing.
If he asks me what's new, I'll give him this."
Good.
And we're thinking, okay. Okay.
What's smart is that she didn't tell him, here's the thing. She waits for him to say, what should I know about? And he's like, she's like, there's this thing going on.
And she gave it to him, and 5 weeks later, he ran an article in Parade magazine that said, this is the latest thing Gloria's going to do at the Ms. Foundation, blah, blah, blah. It'll be happening next April. We had to find it. We had to come up with a date. I mean, it was all that. We came up with a date. We did all that stuff. And sure enough, from that one article, we got like somewhere between 7,000 to 10,000 letters from all over the country, from little girls saying, I've talked about this kind of day with my mommy for years. I'm so glad you came up with it. To a letter from a group of homeless mothers who said, please, can you help us find women to take our girls to work so they learn, you know, something else about other than the struggle. So we got this range of responses, but also from people like Gary Trudeau, who had a daughter.
What's interesting is that Ms. Steinem, she thought not take your daughter, take our daughters, and so people are like, oh, it could be, you know, my neighbor's daughter can come to my, you know, if, like, you know, if, like they have a job that they want, it would be like, oh, I work in this office or I work in a magazine. I'll take my neighbor's daughter to work day. So it's more communal. It isn't just an individual.
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. And so it went from there. So we got the 10,000 letters. So we responded to all of them with a fax machine. Okay. We didn't write letters back to them. We faxed stuff back to them. But it was really 7 people and 2 fax machines, and it was when fax paper was still on a roll.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but somebody had to come in.
Get off on your hands.
And we had to have somebody come in and cut it every day because when we'd come in the next morning, it was in rolls all over the room from all the people who were faxing us. So it was magazines. It was women's magazines first, we met with them, and they all did put somebody on the cover. They did wonderful things. And then we met with more general population magazines and some men's magazines like Esquire, People, those kinds of things. And those editors had daughters, and so did the New York Times. And they just fully embraced it. And once that happened, then we got a lot of television coverage. And from the television,
this was 2 years later or 1 year?
1 year. It was
all in 1 year.
All in 1 year.
Wow.
All in 1 year. From May of 1992 is when the thing ran in Parade magazine, and we did it in April of 93, the first one. So it was less than a year from the Parade magazine. I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't gotten the Parade magazine. I think it would have taken longer, but since it covered the whole country.
Like everyone reads it,
everybody has it, and
it feels
local
perfectly
newspapers
feel good. It's easy to understand.
And Gloria has always been popular, and you know, women seeing her, and what the subject matter was. It was And then, I mean, all the usual. I had been both a union organizer and I'd worked in national politics, so I also knew some of the other things you need to do to get that going. But it was very much a grassroots. We had committees all over the country, and extraordinary support from women who worked in media, because media is still a tough business for women.
Yeah.
And they were so appreciative of a focus on a discussion about what happens at work.
Yeah.
And there was a faction who didn't want it to happen because they didn't want girls to see how many women were, say, at entry-level jobs and all. And I remember saying, they have to see.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the first year, a group of girls went to some place, and the women they gravitated to were the women on the phone.
Yeah.
Because they love talking on the phone.
Yeah.
But one of those women turned to them and said, don't you do what I did. She had dropped out of school.
Yeah.
She said, the reason I'm sitting here answering the phone is because I didn't finish school. So all of you need to finish school. She said, you'll still get to talk on the phone, just not as much as I have to. But so there were extraordinary lessons and great things that happened. I mean, girls who went to meetings at insurance companies and listening to the conversations and understanding that they invested in cigarettes and yet they were a health insurance company.
Yeah.
And leave it to the 11-year-old to say, excuse me,
what's up?
How does this work?
Yeah.
How does this work that you're trying to make people well and you have investments in cigarettes?
Yeah.
And that particular company, divested from tobacco as a result of that.
Yeah, and also like the people in power actually have to explain to an 11 or 12-year-old girl, like, why do they do business the way they do? I mean, if you're embarrassed to explain it to a young girl because you're like, oh, well, you know, the market, this is what they want. If you're embarrassed to, then
why? They literally kept saying, well, why?
Why?
Yeah, kids, why? And eventually this guy had to say, okay, well, we're not going to do this anymore. So it came about in a very organic way. I think is the best. And it was also the timing. It was right after the Anita Hill hearings, when Anita Hill had been on television about sex discrimination.
Yeah.
She had accused she had come forth with a story about Judge Clarence Thomas, who was going to be, or was in the process of being nominated for the Supreme Court. And I think there was a lot of concern in the country about what was happening in the workplace because she had been sexually harassed at work.
Yeah. It was like the first time the word even came up. It was like, what is this?
Yes. And there was a influx of women in Congress as a result of that. And then Take Our Daughters to Work Day came right after that. So there's a whole sort of wave of things that were going on that our timing was just really good. And awesome. I think we've shrunk all that timing now in a lot of the campaigns that we do that are digitally based and all that kind of thing. But this was
still very interesting. Interesting how many like people and like magazines and the hustle, but it did happen quite fast. I mean, even though you didn't have like the internet that
no advertising.
There was no internet or advertising. It's such a good idea and so obvious once you hear it that it's like, well, of course, and everyone can feel like they're part of it.
Yes.
It's neat. There is a call to action. The call to action is the call to action.
Exactly.
Which is like, take your daughter to work day. Like, well, it's not like women's work day, right? That's vague. What does that mean? It's like, no, this is what you have to do. So I actually like that. I like that what it is on the label.
And every woman's a daughter.
Yeah.
So many reporters.
True.
So many reporters would say, "How old's your daughter?" And I'd say, "No, I am one."
Ooh.
Because I did it about my own experience of seeing what my parents did.
Yeah.
I did not do it in reaction to a child. I did it from my own vision. So it would always change the conversation.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are one of...
So that's why I'm in this book.
That's why you're in the book. That's awesome.
That's why I'm in this book.
So you're one of... So there's 60-odd women.
Yes.
All of them amazing. And you're traveling around and you're meeting some of them. That's what... How long have you been traveling and meeting them?
Just the past, I'd say I met some in February, so 3 months. I've met about 20 of the 60 now.
That's awesome.
It's been extraordinary because it's everything from this extraordinary physicist who's at Cambridge to a woman who walked out of North Korea with her mother who was starving.
Wow.
Who's now lives in New York and is at Columbia University learning English, and she's a human rights activist. So it's a range of women who have done just extraordinary things, either in breaking through I think we could probably put I don't know that there's 60 women physicists. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but they're not many. They're not many. Maybe there are. But it's an extraordinary group, and it's not the usual group you see in magazines. That's the other thing that attracted me to this.
Yes.
Is it's as much as like I love like what Glamour does with the awards that they do and everything.
Yeah.
Often they're women that you've seen other places.
I love Rihanna and I love Marissa Mayer, but like I'm ready to learn about other women too.
Yes. No, I think that's absolutely true, and that's what's so great about this. Shall we open the book now? Is that yeah?
Yeah.
Are you ready to do that?
Let's look at the book, and we can also play a video afterwards.
Okay.
With some more details. So this is the book. It's a beautiful book, and I think it's funny. One of the things you told me was when you first mentioned is that you give the book to people, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna give this to my daughter, to my niece," and we're like, "No, it's for you."
Yes,
it's not just for the daughters, the nieces, the granddaughters. It's for everybody.
Yes.
I mean, these are great
men
stories.
and boys, I think, would be floored by and pleasantly surprised at the range and the power of a lot of these women. This is Yunmi Park, who I met yesterday, who lives in New York now, but she walked out of North Korea. She and her mother were starving, and they saw lights. And they decided to walk toward the lights and ended up in China, had a very difficult time there, got to Mongolia, got to South Korea, and she eventually got to New York, and she has an incredible book out about her experience. But there are very few people that have made it out of North Korea, so I think she's a particularly...
Very few women, too.
Oh, almost none. And she wants to help her people. And it was just an extraordinary honor to meet her, and she's very humble, but so brave. I mean, so brave. That's the kind of experience I'm having is meeting these people.
And so there's these really beautiful photos, and the photos are taken by
Brigitte Lacombe,
who is an amazing photographer.
Wasn't she fun?
She's amazing.
Oh, she's a. Again, what an extraordinary experience to have her take my picture and your picture and all of us.
What's amazing was she just took it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've done some photos, shoots and stuff, and there's like a lot of setup and the lights and things, and they go do the makeup. I went there and I was just like, oh, I just like washed my face and I put a little lipstick on, and she just set up 2 lights, snapped 3 shots, and she's like, I got it.
Yeah.
And I was like, really?
Yeah.
And it came out amazing. I mean, she is the way she does it's just amazing because it's she's so good that it's not like it's nothing. She makes it look easy, right?
Yes. But I have been very impressed with everyone that I've seen.
The photos are. I mean, the stories are amazing, but the photos are just astonishing.
And then Brigitte's sister Marianne made videos that go with this whole book, so that you look at the book, you can also go to the website and look at videos of all of us, which are I recently had lunch with a friend of mine who said they were going to play my video at the funeral because it's the best video of me that she's ever seen.
All right, well, check that off the list.
But I said, okay,
oh boy.
I have to think about that.
Jeez. Like, there might be something else you do before your death. I mean,
I thought it was pretty funny. But yes.
Right,
but the videos are good too, but these photos are absolutely amazing.
So this is Yummy, and then on the next page there is...
this is...
No, there's a story, but I just want to show
the story.
There's an interview, and
this is
like
her
beautiful,
story.
Like, they illustrate
This
something.
is her object. Every one of us picked an object that was important to us. Her object was a razor that she kept with her in case somebody was going to try and send her back to North Korea so she could end her own life.
Jeez.
So the difference in the things that people picked is so powerful. Every one of us has a object.
What's your object?
My object was a hairdryer.
There you are.
What is
Look at
so
this beautiful photo. Is this amazing?
Isn't
Look at
this
the lighting.
incredible?
Yeah.
I'm serious. And for all the work I've done in media, because I've done a lot, because I'm always trying to publicize what I do, almost everybody tries to cover up my freckles. What I loved was that she left my freckles
they
right
come
there.
out.
Aren't they? I love my freckles.
Okay.
But mine was a hairdryer because I am constantly on television talking to women, and I remember once I did it without getting a hairdo, and it didn't look so good. So I just decided that I was always going to look like I made an effort.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Look like you made an effort, so people aren't paying attention to what you look like. They're listening to what you're saying.
I know, because otherwise they're like, oh, what's with her hair?
Yes, no, that's
It's true.
That's
it's
fine.
true. It's
That's
true.
fine.
Okay, so you're in here.
Yes, And then you're in here.
I'm in here somewhere. Wait, but who's this?
This
Ava.
is Ava DuVernay, who's made these extraordinary. She was nominated for an Academy Award for her movie 13th, which is an extraordinary film about the prison industrial complex in the United States. I have seen the movie. I recommend everybody see the movie. But she's a great leader. She's an extraordinary leader. In fact, there's a big quote from her on the back, which I love, because all of us, I think, must have people. Can you get it, or is it too much?
No, I got it. There you go. I hear people ask,
how do I get started? How do I do this? You just start, she says. It won't be perfect. It'll be messy and it'll be hard, but you're on your way. I think that is some of the best advice, because we could spend forever trying to be ready. And I think women particularly want to be ready and know everything before they step out. And the sooner you step out, the better.
I know sometimes you have to. I know exactly, because there's this self-consciousness and the esteem. You're like, well, I don't want to do it unless I have 95% or 97%. But actually, the way the world works, people do things with only 10% knowledge, and they just fake it. They just figure it out on the way there. And it's sometimes that doesn't work, but at least if you try. Like, one of the things I try to do is you have to kind of bury your shame of not knowing.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true, and I think that's some of what she's saying, because she wasn't trained as a filmmaker. She had a PR firm in the movie business, and I think watched enough people and had such a strong sense of purpose and passion about the stories that she wanted to tell, that she learned how to do it, on the job. But I've listened to you today talking about how you test your products. I think there's some of that in there, that you get it to a point where you can show people and find out, like, how to make it better based on the feedback that you get. And I think that's very powerful. Yeah,
it's part of it too. It's like, I don't, sometimes I do work on engineering stuff or use chips, and I'm like, it's uncomfortable, but discomfort is fine. It's a healthy emotion, and you can just work through it.
But I think your insight about the shame of not knowing is very, very, very deep, because I think that is so much. I always tell a story, and it's in my video, about a job application with 10 qualities that they're looking for, and if a woman looks at it and she has 8 of the qualities, she thinks she has to go back to school to get the other 2. Whereas if a man looks at it, if he has 2 or 3 of them, he's ready to try.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that change over time now. I'm seeing less of this, I've got to know everything before I do anything. But it's still a challenge, and I think the shame may have something to do with it.
Yeah. That's the emotion that I think is closest to me. I think it's, it's when, because, if you're working at a company, for example, if you're applying for a job, and there's the horror of, like, what if I don't know something and I get called? And then I think for some women, they feel like, if I don't have that perfect, like, if my hair isn't perfect, then nothing I say gets listened to, which is sometimes true. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's true. So, especially in engineering, there's this feeling of, like, I have to have all my data, I have to have everything perfect, I have to have all questions answered in order to have my idea even considered.
And is that true?
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it is.
Is that true for the fellas?
Less so. I think less so. I think there is the ability to just, like, well, let's push this idea. Like, I personally think that for everybody, you should come in with as much information as you have, and then work together.
Of course.
But I think for women, there is a little bit more pressure of, you have to have the perfect result.
Because they're still not sure.
Yeah, they're still not sure.
Still not sure. With all the success that you've had now, has that changed for you?
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Whoa. Okay.
It's in your bones, I think. I think it's a challenge. I'm better at observing it and working around it, but I still have it.
Okay.
But that's fine, right?
Oh, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
I was also thinking not so much of you, but others' reaction to you also. Do they question you at the same level, given the success that you've had?
I think if you're an engineer, it's like the whole point of it is that you get questioned. Like, every time I design something, people are like, oh, why'd you do it this way? Why'd you do it that way? I think I get less of the really, what I would consider, like, silly, well, not a question silly, but it's like, hey, like, you know, I did think through this, there is a reason I
Right,
did
did you think of that?
Did you think of it?
Yes.
And I think that's tamped down a little bit, but I still in my head, one of the things that I've mentioned with Phil, who's doing camera control right now, is when I design something, I have these meetings in my head, and they're kind of horrible. But I have these meetings where it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm meeting all these customers and they're asking me these questions. And I have to basically have those questions answered beforehand. That's how I turn it into something productive. So instead of having like the doubt of not knowing, I'm like, okay, you know, when I write up the product documentation or something, I'm writing up a design, I'll actually write up, the reason I choose this is blah, blah, blah. Like, I'll get rid of those questions one by one, but that also makes my documentation better because I'm explaining my thought process, which people like, because they're like, oh, how did you design this and why did you engineer a certain way?
So in my world, that's figuring out what you're saying at a press conference before you actually,
exactly.
Yes.
You have that, you have it in your head. Before you go.
Yes.
You know, you read the newspaper and you're like, what's the latest crisis? And they're going to, how does this relate to whatever the latest thing is?
Yes.
Same thing.
Yes. I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's so cool. We had such a good discussion, but do you want to we should tell people how to order the book.
Okay, so the most important thing about the book is you can order it on Amazon today. And one of the wonderful things that's going to happen with this book is that Edwina Dunn, the woman who wrote the book, is making 9,000 copies available in the United States to schools across the country. All you have to do is write in, and there's a place on the website where you can write in and say you want a book to go to your school.
Yeah.
In addition to the book, you will get a teaching program to sort of take girls and boys through the book and what it means to be a lead and, you know, to be a female lead. And they're already doing that in England, and they're having extraordinary conversations in schools about all these subjects and all these wonderful women, and also a guide to sort of use the videos. So if you get a book and you know a girl or, you know, boys at a school who you think would benefit from having this book and this teaching program, you can sign them up.
I mean, it's just wonderful to flip through. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have loved to flip through a coffee table book.
It is.
But a book like this.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful photos that, you know, you're captivated by the face, and then you're like, you know, looking at the picture of you and me, it's like, I want to know her story.
Yeah, you do. You really do. And I've been around a long time, and I was happy to be involved in this because it was going to be something that girls got to see. I have been so just overwhelmed with how much I have enjoyed reading the stories and meeting the women. And some of the things that we're working on for the future is an opportunity for more people to not only read about them, but also to meet some of them. So that's something that'll be coming up in the next year.
Okay, cool. All right. So check out the website, which is thefemalelead.com.
Right.
Pick it up on Amazon. You can get your local school a free book, or of course, you can purchase a copy for your school. That's also
yes, you could. Absolutely could. Please do.
And there's the video series, of course, is also on the website, which you should watch. And then you'll be so inspired, you'll want to pick up the book and keep it for yourself. But it's a beautiful book. Thank you, Nell, for coming by.
Thank you.
It was awesome having you. And so everyone, go check out the website. And of course, take our daughters to work.
Okay.
Every year. I would have liked to do that. I was a little bit too old for that, maybe. Well, we're never too old for it, but
No, you always learn things. Some people have turned it around now, and they do take your mother to work.
Yeah.
People who have businesses do it. They bring their mothers.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
She's like, why are you investing in tobacco? She's going to be even worse than 11-year-old. Why?
Yes.
Tell me now. All right. Well, it was awesome having you. Thank you for coming on the video series, and we're going to be doing more together.
Absolutely. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I really have.
High five.
High five.
Nice. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Not lots of 15-year-old girls want to be academics. Lots of people think academics are just old white men sitting and writing lots of books. But if I'm interested in it, then why can't I do it? Why can't I be the next great academic? Why can't I solve the world's next big problem?
When you get old, the world has to be a better place because you were in it.
My mother was certainly determined to encourage what she calls my natural sense of independence and authority. I was the eldest of 4 siblings, and she certainly did not stop me from being the boss.
What I like about acting is the idea that you can sort of step into someone's life. that you can't even imagine ever living. I didn't always want to be an actor. I thought I wanted to be a translator at the UN and help people understand each other.
I escaped from North Korea. When I was very little, my mom was telling me the birds and mice even can hear you, even though these words have ears. And whatever I say, they will listen. So don't even whisper and don't even think.
Not that I'm fearless, it's that I'd never allow my fear to stop me.
Couldn't get a job as an anchor or reporter in the US because I just didn't fit the part. And in 1983, you had to fit the part. You had to be blonde, you had to be blue-eyed, you had to, you know, have perfect teeth.
You know, it does not matter what you look like. You know, if you love this, even in anything, if you love soccer, if you love tennis, you know, if it's something that you love, you have to go for it and you have to believe in yourself.
I think I never wanted to look the same as everybody else. Putting your own stamp, putting your own mark on something and being an individual. And I think that's what London has, is great individuality. You go to other countries in Europe where everybody looks incredibly chic, but they look the same.
3 years ago, I was running around on a pitch by myself with my dog, and that's how I trained. Now, our men's team and our women's team, where I play, are pretty much the same, apart from how much we get paid.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the youngest MP since ever, I think, since it was 1707 the union started, so not that I'm counting, you know.
You're on the outer ridge, the outer rim, and you think, I'm so far from the centre, look at it over there. And actually you just turn a corner and you're in.
I wanted a telescope. It's something I really desired, but we didn't have much money. And I saw in a magazine an evening class, and it was telescope making. And I thought, telescope making? You could just go make your own telescope.
I started learning how to code, and I was really excited about it and wanted to share what I was learning and wanted to get more girls excited about computer sciences.
I certainly didn't go to business school because I'm dyslexic, horribly dyslexic. I couldn't follow a formulae, I couldn't read it as it was written down, so I would memorize it.
I was working as a graphic designer. I was at my desk and all of these emails were coming in and I was just bawling, and my coworkers were looking at me saying, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "My video's going viral." And 11 million views later, it really catapulted my career.
I made a proposition and I said, how about you advance me my wedding money, I can invest in my profession, and then when I get married, I will have enough money to pay for my own wedding. It was cameras over men.
I fell in so many times from climbing, especially when you're doing something that's at your limit, but that's what makes it so special when you get to the top.
How do you do it? You just start. You have to begin, and it won't be perfect, and it'll be messy, and it'll be hard, but you're doing something and you're on your way.
I'm a good leader, and I think that's what I was put here to do, because people follow me. Because people, I mean, millions of people have done what I say. I grew up at the very height of the women's movement. My father was in the legislature in New Jersey, and there were a number of women senators who had just arrived there. And I remember them very distinctly because they were some of the first women in leadership that I had seen. The only other woman I'd ever seen in leadership in a magazine was Queen Elizabeth. So I come from that era. Her coronation was the year I was born. My first big idea was called Take Our Daughters to Work Day. It resonated with so many women and men in terms of understanding that the workplace was still not fair, that they wanted something better for their daughters, and that if taking them to work and showing them both the good and the bad of what was happening to women at work would help their daughters make better decisions about what they were going to do in terms of whether they were going to finish high school or go to college or become an entrepreneur. But it gave girls a sense of what was possible. I went on to develop a campaign called Make Mine $1 Million Business. We need more women to move from a micro enterprise to multi-million-dollar companies to hire more people and create things in the economy, products and services in the economy that women want. Being a leader doesn't mean that you do everything. Being a leader means that you have vision and can enlist other people in doing a lot of the work. If there's a job application and it has 10 qualities that they're looking for,
A man will look at it, and if he has 2, he says, yes, I'm ready for the job. A woman looks at it, if she has 8, she thinks she has to go back to school to get the other 2. And we need to get ourselves into a situation where we can look at that job application, and maybe we need to have 3 or 4, but that we're ready to say yes to whatever the opportunity or the challenge is, as opposed to thinking we need to know everything before we do it. I mean, I believe, that when the women of the United States decide they want a woman president, we'll have a woman president. When women decide, there is not a sector in the economy where women do not work now. And when I started Take Our Daughters to Work Day, there were many sectors where there were no women. There are now women everywhere. So the progress in the long view is excellent. I think in the day-to-day fight of it and the struggle of it, it is now up to us to keep everybody's feet to the fire about the legislation that was passed, that we actually enforce it. The enforcement of legislation, I think, is a bigger challenge on some levels now, say with things against domestic violence and sexual harassment and rape. The laws have to be enforced because the laws are on the books, which was a huge accomplishment. It is us appreciating our value in a way that is not about us being a product, but is about being a vital person in society who creates value, is valuable, and has particular values that the world is crying out for. I mean, we need more of our values expressed in terms of the care that we have for our children, for our parents, for our communities, for the environment, all of those things that women experience directly because they deal with sick family members who breathe bad air, all those things, eat bad food. And we have to raise our voices louder. I'm not conventionally beautiful. I've always been, overweight, all those things, which most women are. You just have to look like you to do whatever you want to do.
This is Adafruit Pink. This is my color. I've always kind of liked having like a lip ring and jewelry, and my hair is a little bit unusual. And you know what? I think the best part is when I meet young girls and they say, I want to be able to look like that and have a job. I don't want to have to wear a suit every day. I'm like, if you're an engineer, you can look however you want. That's one of the best parts of being an engineer and being a business owner. When you study engineering at MIT, you're learning a lot of calculus and science and algebra, and you're doing a lot of the math behind engineering, but you don't actually get to build anything with your hands because you're doing so much theory. And so after I graduated, I thought, well, I'd like to do more with my hands. I want to build more. I want to be more creative with electronics. And so I started building my own projects. Like I made my own MP3 player, for example. And it was really fun because I didn't want to buy an iPod. I just wanted to build my own. And after I did that, I put up instructions online on how to build your own MP3 player, and you can put it into a mint tin after you're done. And it became a really popular project, and people shared it online. And a lot of people emailed me and said, I'd like to build my own mint tin MP3 player. Can you sell me a kit, a pack of parts, so that I can follow along at home and build this myself without going to 50 different stores to buy one thing? And that's actually kind of how Adafruit started. Right now we have 40,000 square feet in Soho, Manhattan, and we have 85 employees full-time. We have 850 tutorials on our learning system, and these tutorials basically teach you how to do everything from the most basic skills on how to cut wire and solder two things together, all the way up to making your own Halloween costume with wings that flap and fire-breathing masks and your own synthesizers, your own computer, like everything in between, so that people can pick and choose what projects are most inspiring to them, and then they can follow along and learn more advanced skills as they gain experience. I think that we are absolutely changing things. Historically, a lot of the STEM fields, such as biology, were not mostly women, they were mostly men, but that has been changed. And I think that what we do on a day-to-day basis can affect the current generation and future generations. We had one parent contact us and said, my daughter actually asked me if there were any boy engineers because the only engineers she's seen on your show have been women. And so I was like, yes, like we've totally brainwashed this girl, and that's awesome. We are showing people that engineering isn't just the physics of how a transistor works. It's using the technology and being creative with it and solving problems that people have, or creating something beautiful with it. And I think that's opening up engineering to like a whole new group of people that maybe would never have thought that engineering was for them.